Okay, I want to share a little story with you before I go into my main message right now. A story of a group of Adventist youth who heard God calling them to preach the gospel in a very difficult part of the world. Along Tanzania's Indian Ocean, that's a long way from us, lies a town of more than 8,000 inhabitants. The town is predominantly of a non-Christian faith, people who do not believe in the God of heaven as we do. More than 99% of the town's population is of that faith. Known to be a highly superstitious town, causing people to be afraid of the people of that town. Several attempts were made over the years to preach the gospel to them with little results, not much at all. But in the year 2000, a group of young people decided to conduct an evangelistic series on their own in that town. And so they did. The work before them was delicate and it was risky. They decided that they would spend 2 weeks in earnest prayer before they began that particular series of meetings. Amazingly, a few days after they asked permission from the town elders to hold meetings, permission was granted. They were surprised that would happen. The young people continued to pray earnestly that God's will would be done, and these young Adventists met every morning just as the sun was coming up on the beach right next to the ocean, the Indian Ocean that was there. And one morning, unknown to the young people, the town elders sent a group of young people to that spot. Why were they sent to that spot? Because they knew that the young people, the young Adventist people, would be there at that time, 5 o'clock in the morning. And one morning, the would-be killers, these were sent to kill the Adventist young people. The would-be killers went to the shore and found the Adventist youth kneeling in prayer just as they always did every morning at 5 o'clock. And all of a sudden they saw something else. Surrounding the young people was a wall of fire, literal fire surrounding the young people. And of course they were shocked and they dared not do anything else and they ran away. Well, so the Adventist young people went on with the series. They had the meetings in the middle of town. They started the meetings, but the elders of the church were the elders of the village were so afraid, they sent their youth now to steal the equipment because they stored the equipment right in the center of the town. And they sent the youth to steal the equipment and make life miserable for these Adventist young people that were there holding these meetings. This time, what do you think they saw? Not fire, but a tall man in a white robe with a sword walking around the equipment. Amen. And guess what they did? They got scared again and ran away. Nothing happened. Finally, the elders in the city said, "We are tired of you youth. You don't know how to do these things. We'll take matters into our own hands and we'll get this job done. We'll get rid of these young people." Soon after, as the meetings were going on, 2 elderly people, the elders of the village, walked right into the middle of the meeting and walked toward the front where one of the young Adventists was preaching. Before they reached the front, the town elders started jumping and shouting and saying, "We're on fire, we're on fire." There was no fire. And they yelled and shouted and ran away. One of them was heading right toward the speaker on the front, but instead of confronting him, he ran right past him off to the side. So this got the attention of the young people of that town. So what did they do? They came to the Adventist young people and said, "You're using superstitious powers that we don't know about. Teach us your powers right now." And so what do you think the Adventist young people said? "We don't have powers. It's the God of heaven that surrounded us with fire. And it's the God of heaven that sent an angel down to speak to your hearts." And sure enough, the meetings came and many people were baptized. After that, a journalist from the main newspaper of the area came out and interviewed these Adventist young people, what was going on. And now we have of 200 people. Amen. God worked a miracle from beginning to end. There's a text that I want you to read. Would you turn to Zechariah? That's one of the hard books of mine. Zechariah is tucked away there in the Old Testament. I don't know if I'm doing this or if the audio is just playing games with us. I'm not sure. Zechariah chapter 2, verse 5. It says, "For I, saith the Lord, will be unto her a wall of fire round about, and will be the glory in the midst of her." So they received a definite fulfillment of prophecy. I will be a wall of fire round about. Amen. And that is confirmed also. Let's get our first statement up here. "The heavenly angels bend lovingly over them and are as a wall of fire round about them." So this is a prophecy, and it was fulfilled to those young people. One more. "We shall walk among the angels. They will be like a wall of fire round about us, and we shall one day walk with them in the city of God." So once again, prophecy fulfilled. But notice, how can we have the same fire around us? How can we have the same protection that these young people had? By going out and doing it for the Lord and getting on our knees and praying and asking that God's will be done. It can be done for every one of us if it is God's will. A wall of fire of protection for God's people. Okay, now let's bring it down a little closer to our time. The spirit that we have just seen here in this little story is seen in more recent times. Toward the end of the 19th century, there was a religious movement that felt compelled to launch a campaign to recognize what day of the week would you think as the day of worship for the United States? Sunday, yes, the day that everyone sets aside. They wanted to unite the country, these people. They wanted to get the people back in church. They wanted everyone to go to church. Different Protestant churches united together, different for reform movements. And they found a champion to lead their cause, a senator in the United States Senate in Washington, D.C., by the name of Henry W. Blair. He was a strict church member, and he proposed a national Sunday rest bill, Senate Bill 2983, on May 21, 1888. A significant date for Adventists today. All right, so this would have amended the U.S. Constitution. This would have been a major change in our Constitution. Sunday would be the mandatory day of rest for everyone in the United States and all those in the surrounding territories. Commercial transactions would cease on that day. Public amusements would be closed. No interstate commerce from one state to another would be allowed. All secular activities, all parades, all functions of the city government would not take place anymore on Sunday. After Senator Blair presented his bill, his fellow lawmakers referred it to the Senate Committee on Education and Labor. That's how our government works, committees, and then to the floor of the Senate. Testimony was heard by this committee from all sides, and someone came from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Do you know who that was? Alonzo T. Jones. If you've never heard that name before, that's a very significant name in Adventist history. Alonzo Jones came and protested to the Senate about this bill that was being proposed. He said, "The government has no right to make any law relating to the things that pertain to God or offenses against God or religion. The government has nothing to do with religion." That's exactly what we believe. The government should not interfere with religious choices. He said an attempt to legislate the Sabbath and place it on Sunday was a terrible infringement on both the Bible and the U.S. Constitution. He stressed that even if the government reflected the will of the majority, it had no authority more than a king or a pope to make decisions for people's faith. And he concluded his testimony by saying, "Government should leave religion to every man's conscience and his God." I hope we all agree with that. Amen. That is a bottom line teaching of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Well, these words of A.T. Jones left a real impression on the minds of these senators, and as a result, this Sunday law bill and Christian amendment to the Constitution failed to receive the votes to get it out of the committee, didn't even get to the Senate floor. It failed to get the votes to leave the committee. Well, Senator Blair was a courageous man. He was unfazed by this defeat. And so he tried again, a Sunday law in December 9, 1889, Senate Bill 946. He tried again, and again he failed. So he's trying again, one after the other. Great victory for God and his people. In 1892, now remember that's just a few years later, Sunday law legislators were able to make up some ground again with regard to a national Sunday law. They presented a new bill, and the purpose of this bill was to prohibit opening on Sunday any exhibition or exposition for which the United States government makes appropriations. What was it saying? That the U.S. government, if it was to fund any major event in the country, Sunday would have to become sacred if they were going to fund that activity. And this was done in anticipation of the largest gathering that had ever been held in the United States, the Columbian Exhibition, also known as the Chicago World's Fair. The Chicago World's Fair, 1893. Now, this effort failed, but again, they tried again, a second measure through the House of Representatives, the Sunday Civil Bill, loaning $5 million to the Chicago World's Fair, conditioned on Sunday closing. And this bill passed. It got all the way through the Senate, signed by the president, and became the law. All right, what was this Chicago World's Fair all about? It was a gathering of all people in the United States and from abroad, from overseas, that would last 6 months. This was not a 2-week fair. This was 6 months long. People from around the world would attend. Now, unknown to everyone else, the event planners for the Chicago World's Fair were not happy with the Sunday law. Why? Because it would cut off business on Sunday, and Sunday was the day that people could come to the fair and spend their money and all the things that they wanted to do for that World's Fair. And so they opened the fair on Sunday, directly in opposition to the bill that had been passed by the Congress. 65,000 booths in that fair opened up and did business on Sunday. Well, what do you think that caused? A big reaction from those who had been promoting Sunday as the day of worship. And they demanded everything be closed immediately, and they began to picket and protest against this violation of the law that had been passed. Began a national debate, and the Sunday agitators began to lobby Congress to enforce the law. And even the Roman Catholic Church took advantage of this particular situation. The famous Roman Catholic Cardinal Gibbons from Chicago gave his famous Rome's Challenge during this 1893 Chicago World's Fair. He wrote a whole series of articles that are still available today, and we can read them, that challenged Protestants as to why they keep Sunday holy, because Sunday is our day. Roman Catholic cardinal. Why should you be lobbying to keep a day which is not even talked about in the Bible? Let it alone, get out of there, or become Roman Catholics. That was his challenge. Rome was laughing at all the controversy, and I'm saying, does that sound familiar for our time? Again, for the glory of God, Alonzo T. Jones met the challenge. He came in 1892 and in 1893 again, to speak in defense of religious liberty and to denounce the oppression by the national churches in using the arm of the state to influence their religion. And he spoke again. And this time he came with 350,000 signatures of people who said this was a bad law and should be revoked. 350,000 signatures. As a result, the government held its peace, said, we're not going to do anything about this. You can stay open on Sunday in violation of the law. And the government said, we're not going to enforce it. So there were two clear voices out of that whole situation. Rome's call that Sunday was her mark. That was the word that was used by the cardinal. Sunday is the mark of our church. And then number two, A.T. Jones standing for God. Are some of us going to be called to stand for God in places that we're not expecting to stand right now? Is there something that God is asking us to prepare for right at this time? Now let's bring it down to our time. The world saw many shocking illustrations as rioters forced their way into the United States Capitol. Remember that? January 6, 2021. And one of the most disturbing sights of that particular day was a flag, a banner, suggesting something very interesting. It simply said, Jesus 2020. They were there for Jesus, some of them. They were wanting to do his will, get the country back to God. There's no doubt that something called Christian nationalism, believing in the country and believing in Christ, came together on that day for many people. And that's an attempt to link Christianity and national identity together. The idea that to be a true patriot, you have to be a Christian. And to be a true Christian, you have to be a patriot and storm the United States Capitol in that particular way. Hardly surprising that this kind of thinking is shot through with violence, because people are going to make you do what you don't want to do. All right? Seventh-day Adventist Church is absolutely clear on how it views Christian nationalism. It says this has no part in the government of the United States. You don't have to be a Christian to be a citizen of the United States. And you don't have to be a citizen of the United States even to enjoy the comfort, the blessings of the country. And so the reaction was strong. Seventh-day Adventists, how are we going to approach this? At this point, I want to share with you some statements from inspiration. The key one we're going to start with is this one. National apostasy will speedily be followed by national ruin. National apostasy will speedily be followed by national ruin. That was written in 1897, right after all of this had taken place. Some have read this statement, the one we're just looking at right now, and they've decided that the current pope is striving to bring all nations under control, under his way, by means of a leftward shift. What's a leftward shift? A more liberal shift in thinking by people than we now have. They conclude that socialism and globalism and environmental policies will bring the nation to financial ruin. Now, my question this morning is very important. Are these the way that our country will come to national ruin? Is this the way the Lamb will become to speak as a dragon? No doubt, certainly, Satan will use all sides. He'll use left and middle and right. He doesn't care what political area you are involved in. He'll use all sides, but that isn't the key point. Inspiration spells out for us, without our having to guess at it, what will bring about persecution in America. We're pretty comfortable, aren't we? We can come to church every Sabbath morning. We can do the things that we want to do. That time is coming to an end. We don't know when, but it is coming to an end. And Satan will use this in a specific way. So here we go. The greatest danger to Americans today is not an overwhelming state, a change in our Constitution, but this. When Protestant churches shall unite with the secular power to sustain a false religion, then will the papal Sabbath be enforced by the combined authority of church and state. There will be a national apostasy which will end only in national ruin. So let's tear that apart a little bit. What will cause the national apostasy? Protestant churches are the impetus. That's what it said. When Protestant churches. That's the impetus. Not even the Catholic Church. Protestant churches. They unite with the state. We're just looking at this paragraph. They unite with the state to sustain a false religion. So Protestant churches uniting with the state. And Sunday enforcement is the dominant issue. That's the issue that is under consideration. Church and state unite is what this paragraph says. And this results in national apostasy, which will lead to national ruin. Nothing about a change in the Constitution, nothing about some socialist government taking over and telling us what we can do and what we can't do. This is about Protestant churches uniting with the country, the state. In America, it is not Catholics that will be the dominant force in bringing this about. Romanism in the old world. What's the old world? Europe. And across the ocean. And apostate Protestantism in the new will pursue a similar course toward those who will honor all the divine precepts. So apostate Protestantism in our country, the new world, that's what will be the force here. So the greatest threat to liberty is not from the state, not from the government, not from amending the Constitution, not from the Senate, but from an apostate church. Let the principle once be established in the United States that the church may employ or control the power of the state, that religious observances may be enforced by secular laws. In short, that the authority of church and state is to dominate the conscience, and the triumph of Rome in this country is assured. Let's look at this paragraph again. Who's in control here? Who's calling the shots? The church. The church. What do they enforce? Religious observances. Sunday. What is it that assures the triumph of Rome in the United States? Is it a redistribution of wealth? Is it socialism? Is it environmental policies? Is it globalism? No, none of those things. Nothing that is being proclaimed today. It's when the Protestant church controls the secular state and enforces religious observances. Very simply put. Protestant churches controlling religious observances. The same thing has been seen throughout history. This is nothing new. The Roman state was Pilate when Jesus was on trial, and the Roman state tried to save Jesus from the cross, but what happened? The religious leaders protested and said, his blood be on us and on our children. We will take responsibility for his death. Apostate church leaders. In the Dark Ages, it happened over and over and over again. The apostate Christian church dominated and controlled the secular state, and together they persecuted millions. So this is not something that's just hidden away in a corner. This has been done over and over in the Christian era. At the start, we quoted that statement, so let's look at it again. National apostasy will speedily be followed, by national ruin. And some apply this to government change in wealth and socialism and globalism. But in the writings of Ellen White, whenever the words national ruin are applied to the United States, she makes it clear that it comes not primarily from the government, not primarily from the Catholic Church, but from the leading Protestant churches of the United States. That's a little different than some of us have been told recently. The issue in the final conflict is Sunday versus Sabbath. There is no change in that. Church affiliation is not the best way to predict what a church will do and what the government will do. And one more. When our nation, in its legislative councils, shall enact laws to bind the consciences of men in regard to their religious privileges, enforcing Sunday observance, and bringing oppressive power to bear against those who keep the seventh-day Sabbath, the law of God will, to all intents and purposes, be made void in our land, and national apostasy will be followed by national ruin. Bible Commentary, Volume 7, 977. It's a pretty clear statement, isn't it? It's not ambiguous. It's not hard to understand. When the nation in its legislative councils will enforce Sunday observance. Now, how will the Senate and how will the House get to this point? Let's read one more. To secure popularity and patronage, legislators will yield to the demand for a Sunday law. So where does the Sunday law demand come from? From the Pope? No. From the president? No. From the Senate or the House? No. It comes from the people. The demand for a Sunday law will come from the people of the United States who are worshiping in churches every Sunday. And that will be the force that will lead to the Lamb becoming a dragon in its words and its activity. So it comes from religious people. It doesn't come from secular legislative sources. Protestants are following in the steps of papists. Nay, more, they are opening the door for the papacy to regain in Protestant America the supremacy which she has lost in the old world. Protestants are going to repeat what happened during the period of the Dark Ages and the destruction of our liberties back then. So there we have my understanding and the Adventist understanding of how the Lamb will come to speak as a dragon. Threat to religious and civil authorities coming primarily from Protestant churches, having lost their ability to persuade people, are now going to turn to coercion to make people worship the way they want to do it. Apostate Christians, again, leading Protestant churches of America, will be compelling the state to do it the way they want to. So what I'm going to say is nowhere that I have read in the writings of Ellen White or in the Bible that America will impose some kind of left-wing liberal government of socialism upon the people of this country, a humanistic system of tyranny. I haven't read that. That has been speculated by current Adventists today, that that's the way it's going to happen. One more. Even in free America, rulers and legislators, in order to secure public favor, will yield to the popular demand for a law enforcing Sunday observance. Will yield, notice, not will initiate, will yield to the demand. Let's get back to church on Sunday. That's a hard thing for us to understand right now, because what do people want to do on Sunday? A lot of them don't want any part of church. They want to go out and play and have fun and do interesting things and forget about religion. So how could this ever take place in the United States of America, that the popular demand, and please notice, where will this take place? Even in free America, not tyranny America, not coercion America, not the America that some are predicting will happen. In free America, the America that we enjoy right now, the demand will come from the people to get back to God. And America is still free. That's a different perspective. All right, that's the message I really wanted to share with you this morning. How will the Lamb come to speak as a dragon? The Lamb will come when the people demand it, to speak as a dragon. And that's what we need to fear. A little story, not an inspired story. Well, first of all, one more quotation. This is really an interesting one. Among earth's inhabitants, scattered in every land, there are those who have not bowed the knee to Baal. Like the stars of heaven, which appear only at night, these faithful ones will shine forth when darkness covers the earth and gross darkness the people. In heathen Africa, in the Catholic lands of Europe and of South America, in China, in India, in the islands of the sea, and in all the dark corners of the earth, God has in reserve a firmament of chosen ones that will yet shine forth amidst the darkness. Even now they are appearing in every nation, among every tongue and people, and in the hour of deepest apostasy, when Satan's supreme effort is made to cause all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive under penalty of death the sign of allegiance to a false rest day. These faithful ones, blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, will shine as lights in the world. The darker the night, the more brilliantly will they shine. Are you enthusiastic about a statement like that? I hope so. Right now, as we speak, there are people that we have no idea that are willing to respond when the laws start to be passed around the world to force people's conscience. Now a little not inspired story. Whom have you left behind to carry out the work? Asked the angels. A little band of men and women who love me, replied the Lord Jesus. But what if they should fail when the trial comes? Will all you have done be defeated? Yes, if they should fail, all I have done will be defeated, but they will not fail. Like I say, it's not inspired, but I believe that with all my heart. That the angels are saying the same thing some of us are saying. How will it all work out? Not in the free country of America. It can't happen. Not in a million years will it happen. And the God that is taking care of this country and the God that is taking care of our hearts says they will not fail. I believe that. A little poem to close. Wilt thou follow me? The Savior asked. The road looked bright and fair and filled with youthful hope and zeal. I answered, anywhere. Wilt thou follow me? Again he asked. The road looked dim ahead, but I gave one glance at his glowing face. To the end, dear Lord, I said. Wilt thou follow me? I almost blanched, for the road was rough and new, and I felt the grip of his steady hand. It thrilled me through and through. Still followest thou? 'Twas a tender tone, and it thrilled my inmost heart. I answered not, but he drew me close, and I knew we would never part. I hope that's true for every one of us. The road is going to look dim, but we cannot lose the grip of his hand. The way lies through Gethsemane. The way lies through the city gates, outside the camp. The way lies alone. We're not going to be able to fellowship together like this anymore. But the voice is still, follow me. And it leads to the joy that was set before him. And it leads to eternal life. May we be faithful to that principle. Seventh-day Adventism was called into existence to preach some things that are very unpopular. And one of them is that the United States, this great United States, will fall, come to national ruin. How can that be? Because God said it would happen. And the Bible said it would happen. The Bible also makes it very clear in Revelation 13 and 14 that there will be miracles performed by Satan directly to prove that he is right and God is wrong.